revellers. Alas, a God's will, meet at a poor, blind, sordid alehouse, drink up a barrel of drink, and lie there drunk 2 or 3 hours together. Fall together by the ears.
Pop your nose in a good glass of this.
Alas, a God's will, 'twas not so in Queen Elizabeth's time. In those days, youth bear respect to old age. Yes, all this is now lost, and pride, whoring, wantonnesses, and drunkennesses. Nowadays, forsooth, everyone must have coaches. Forsooth, 'twas not so in Queen Elizabeth's time. In those days, gentlemen kept good horses, and men-at-arms that could ride them. This made the gentry robust and hardy and fit for service. Nowadays, forsooth, we are come to our coaches. Forsooth. In Queen Elizabeth's time, 'twould have been as much disgrace for a young cavalier to be seen riding through the streets of London in a coach as 'twould be nowadays to be seen in a petticoat. Nowadays, young gentlemen know not how to ride or handle their weapons. So God help the king, now that we are come to our coaches, forsooth. Oh, Lord bless me. Yes. One would think an evil genius did haunt me. A writing schoolmaster takes the chamber above me, comes in 12, 1 o'clock, wakes me out of my sleep, rises very early each morning, and falls a-hammering for a quarter of an hour or more. A week after comes his man and his wife with a child, breeding teeth, that cries day and night. Yes.
May I introduce you to the gentleman you've just seen clambering from his four-poster bed, rather crotchety, I'm afraid, rather early one morning. He is a character I play called John Aubrey in an entertainment which was devised and directed by Patrick Garland, based on the writings of John Aubrey, who wrote short biographies or brief lives of his contemporaries. He was a 17th century diarist and chronicler who was born in 1625 and died in 1697, and went through that wonderful period of history which included Charles I and the Reformation, Restoration, and Charles II, and died during the reign of William III. And he tells wonderful stories about his contemporaries, marvelous human stories. He complains often that the characters we read of in history books, the cardboard cutout figures, are not the real people, and I think he does introduce us to the real people of that period. And I have the honor and the great pleasure of playing him in this show, Brief Lives. The result of 3 hours makeup, which I have to do every day for this show, is the character you're now about to see in this excerpt of John Aubrey's Brief Lives. when we were researching the show originally, the man was pretty well little thought of in his time, and in fact his brief lives weren't published until 2 centuries after his death. We found that in fact he'd been buried in Mary Magdalene's church. Now there was no monument there, but we persuaded a friendly vicar to delve into the archives, and we found the recording of his death, which said, John Aubrey, a stranger, was buried here 1697.
I was born at Easton Piers in the county of Wiltshire on March the 12th, St. Gregory's Day, Anno Domini 1625, about sunrising, being very weak and so like to die that I was christened before morning prayer. A gentlewoman of my acquaintance had a beloved daughter who had long been ill and received no benefit of her physician. The mother dreamed that if she gave her daughter a drench of ewe pounded, she would recover. So she gave her the drench, and it killed her. Whereupon the mother grew quite distracted. Her chambermaid, to humour her and to mitigate her grief, said, "Oh, surely that would not kill her. She would adventure to drink the same herself." So she did. And it killed her also. This about the year 1670, 1671. Oh, I knew the family. Nowadays, some people say, some people fear the physician more than the disease. I would rather take physic of an old woman who had been at sick people's bedsides than from the most learned physician. Rhys Evans had a great bulbous nose, and he was told by an old woman that the king's hand would cure it. So the next time King Charles came on his usual walk into St. James Park, Rhys Evans knelt before him and took the king's hand and kissed it and rubbed his nose in it, which cured him, but disturbed the king. When I was a boy, before the Civil Wars, the fashion then was for old women and maids to tell fabulous stories at night about spirits and walking ghosts. Oh, the country people of those times used to talk much of fairies. The fairies swept up the hearth clean at night, would set the shoes by the fire, and many times would find a 3p in one of the shoes in the morning. Oh, Mistress Markey told me her mother had as much money from the fairies as made her a little silver cup, 30 shillings in value. But when the Civil Wars came, the phantoms vanished. Now children fear no such thing. And yet, not 20 years ago, not far from Cirencester, there appeared an apparition. Oh, Master Lily says it was a fairy. But being demanded whether a good spirit or a bad, it returned no answer, but disappeared with a curious perfume and most melodious twang. When I was a boy, before the Civil Wars, the custom, but these Civil Wars coming on, have put these rites and customs quite out of fashion, and the divine arts of printing and gunpowder have frighted away Master Robin Goodfellow and the fairies. Oh, wars do... Wars do not only extinguish... Wars do not only extinguish religion, but superstition also. And nothing disperses phantoms more readily than gunpowder. Well, what was I best fitted to do? Truly, nothing, only umbrages. At 8, I was a kind of engineer, and then I turned to drawing. And at 9, to colors. If I were to be good for anything, 'twould have been a painter. My greatest delight was to be continually among the joiners and masons and carpenters. I lamented much that I lived not in a city, Bristow, where I would have had access to watchmakers and locksmiths. It would have tempted me to have been a botanist, had I had leisure. Now I am stormed by my chiefest friends to turn ecclesiastic. And truly, if I was offered a good parsonage of 200 to 300 pounds a year, it would be a shrewd temptation. How should I look in a cassock? I remember at one time, as I was coming out of All Souls, Oxford, the gapeabouts at the gate pointed at me, and one said, "Romano Catholicus." Romano Catholicus. Oh, I doubt how strongly the Church of England stands if the Church of England should fall. What would I do then? Pah! The cassock stinks. 'Twould be ridiculous. Robert Sanderson, Lord Bishop of Lincoln. Now, he had no great memory. When I was a freshman and heard him preach, he couldn't remember the Lord's Prayer. It fell to his lot one Easter to preach the Passion Sermon. And 'twas said of him then at the university that our Savior had never suffered so much since his crucifixion. All things are not possible to all men. Richard Corbett, Doctor of Divinity, Richard Corbett, Doctor of Divinity, Bishop of Oxford, was the son of a gardener at... was the son of a gardener at Twickenham. His conversation was extremely pleasant. And one of his greatest friends was Dr. Stubbins. Dr. Stubbins, a jolly fat doctor. And Dr. Corbett told me that one time, as he and this Dr. Stubbins. At one time, as he and his Dr. Stubbins were riding together in Lob Lane in wet weather, it was an extraordinarily deep and dirty lane. The coach fell, and Dr. Corbett said that Dr. Stubbins was up to his elbows in mud. And he was up to his elbows in Dr. Stubbins.